Hello and welcome back, and today we're going to talk about how to synchronize and back up a QNAP NAS and an Asustor NAS. Perhaps you're one of the people that bought a QNAP NAS and got slightly attracted by the Nimbustor NAS, or perhaps you're an old Asustor user that wants to make the jump to QNAP. One way or another, there's lots of ways in which you can get different NAS devices to work together and synchronize their data. And whether you are going to use it as upgrading your NAS to a new brand, or you're using it as a second-class backup strategy, so you can have two tiers of NAS with all of your data spread across them, there's lots of appeal to having ways in which you can migrate data between different NAS brands. Now, the system we're going to use today is known as Remote Sync, or rsync, and most of the popular NAS brands at the top tiers, that's Synology, QNAP, Asustor, TerraMaster and WD, all of these brands have rsync in their arsenal of things that they do. And with regard to QNAP and Asustor, getting these two devices synchronized together is actually surprisingly easy. Before we get to the nitty-gritty task of synchronization, let's get the crossing the T's and the dotting of the I's done in the initial stages. First and foremost, on the Asustor NAS, you need to head over to the Services option. Now, in the Services option, go right down to the bottom, and there's an option that says rsync server. Now, from here, you need to tick this box, which will be disabled by default, to enable the rsync server task. From here, once you've ticked that, the port number by default will be 873. Do not change that unless you know more about networking or you have multiple backups all happening at the same time. But otherwise, leave that number at 873. If you like, you can encrypt transmission, but it should be noted that this is really only for business and for users who are using mission critical or particularly sensitive data, because it will lower your read and write speed, so do bear that in mind. Next, go to the bottom and make sure you create a module. A module, in the Asustor speak, is the means with which to create which folder you want to back up to or from. So from here you would select one of these options, and I've already selected one in advance and created an account. And this backup module account I've just called Asustor. It's completely easy, and you just give it a username and a password. In my case, I'm going for the username admin and the password password. Once that's done, click apply. In my case, no settings were changed, but for yours, make sure those settings have been changed. Move over to the QNAP, which I'm doing a split screen on right now, and from there, go to the application Hybrid Backup Sync. From this option, once you're inside Hybrid Backup Sync and it opens, you will get the option, sorry, it's because of my screen recording software, it will cause a slight delay to graphic generation. Don't have a go at the QNAP for that. There's a few options there, just to flick through there when the pop-up comes up. But what we're looking to look at right now is this option here at the bottom, Backup Server. Once you've selected it, select rsync server. Now, this app, you may notice the port number 873, just like the other one. And from here, we've enabled maximum download rate, so no limitations of the upload and download at any time. But if you are on a shared network, or if you've got multiple users, or if you utilize IP cameras in your environment, it may be worth keeping an eye on the upload and download speeds, because rsyncing between different NAS brands will consume a lot of your network bandwidth if you leave it at maximum, and if you're using IP cameras, this can affect read and write performance. If you go down here, you've got options such as encryption and synchronization options, but mainly the one we want to look at is that username and password again. I'm using admin and I'm going to use the password password. It's worth noting this simply because this is an extra tier of security with regard to synchronization, because this is a lot of data getting handed around. So you want to make sure that the right authentication and protocol is in place. Make sure you click apply at the end, as I've already done, and that will set up rsync and have your QNAP ready to send and receive data. So if we go back to the overview, first thing we'll do is show you how to send data from an Asustor NAS to a QNAP NAS. On the Asustor, go to Backup and Restore. From Backup and Restore, let's move that to the middle, go to the first option, Remote Sync. Then click Create. The first thing it will ask you is, are you backing up and sending to just Asustor NASes, or is it an rsync compatible server? And in this case, it's an rsync compatible server. It's a non-Asustor NAS that is compatible with rsync. This job, we're going to be sending from the Asustor NAS to the rsync compatible server, otherwise known as the QNAP. You can do it the other way around if you choose with this option, but for now we're going to go along with that. We click next, and now it's asking us for the server address. The server address is the IP. That's the numbers here, just the first 4 sets of numbers. When you copy it in some cases http:// will be there. Make sure you delete this because it will only cause problems later. The port is 873 just like it was earlier, and be sure to enter the correct rsync admin and password that we added earlier on the QNAP. If you want to use encryption, here's another chance, but we're not going to on this occasion. Click next, and it's now going to ping the QNAP server to double check that all of those details are correct, as well as pull a selection of available folders that rsync username and password have got permission to access. This will allow the Asustor NAS to be able to interact with the QNAP and send files from its location to the correct location on the QNAP. This can take anything from 1 minute to several minutes because of the busyness of network protocol and the size of files we have in question. Let's fast forward to the finding of that NAS. It's found the NAS, and if we go along here, we can see the available folders on the TerraMaster. For now, we're just going to select the transcoding folder, which has got a number of dense 4K and 1080p files. If we click next, it will then list the destination folders that are available on the QNAP NAS. Once again, this can take anything from 15 seconds all the way through to a minute or two, depending on the number of folders that are readily available. And in the case of this QNAP, this is quite a large arrangement of data, so it's not a huge surprise that this is taking a fraction longer than what we're used to. Now we've got our QNAP folders on screen, we can select which folder we want this data to go into. I'm going to send it into CCTV for now, and then I'm going to click next, and this allows us to choose whether we want to start the backup of our Asustor to the QNAP now or later on. So let's do a scheduled backup. This allows me to do either once, daily, weekly or monthly. I'm going to do a daily backup of around 1 AM when most people are going to be asleep or there'll be no one at the office. Click next, and from here you can name the job as you so choose and also change some of the options such as archiving in incremental backups and create zips and compressed folders, as well as whether you want to keep metadata and thumbnails and stuff like that. You can also create limitations on the bandwidth usage by the backup in real time, as well as finding out in the attempt, if a backup fails, how you want the device to react, whether you want it to keep repeating or just a certain number of tries, or to alert users if the backup hasn't completed. After this, we click next. We can review the backup as we've set it up, click finish, and from here we've got that job ready to go whenever we want to action it. Now, say we wanted to back up the QNAP to the Asustor. Well, it's the same sort of process, but there's a few extra options along the way. So if we leave that on screen, and now we make our way to the QNAP. From the QNAP, we want to go to all jobs. From here, we click create job and then create sync job. After this, there are different kinds of synchronized job readily available to us. For this, I'm going to go for sync local to remote. This is the local NAS that's going to synchronize with a remote area, in this case the Asustor. From there we are going to do an rsync job, and this is a remote synchronization job. There are other options once again with different targets in mind. Then we click next. From here I've already created a job for this Asustor, but luckily we should be able to create a brand new one. We go to Remote RTRR Real-Time Remote Replication Server and click Settings. From the remote connection options, what we can do is add that IP from over here. What we want to utilize is the IP of our Asustor NAS and chuck it over here. Once again, ensure you've removed the HTTP/ or any colons there. We just want those 4 sets of numbers. We can see the port is the same as it was during the setup, and of course we have to add that username and password. After this, we can choose whether we want to encrypt the data via a separate port, but again it's worth mentioning that will reduce our read and write speeds, and it's only really recommended for enterprise and business users. After this, we can click test and it shall test the connection for a little time and see what the average read and write speed it's going to be between the QNAP sending data and the Asustor receiving it. In my network, these NASs are in very different areas and using power line adapters at 3 to 500 megs. Consequently, the average speed we'll be getting here is not indicative of the setup that you're going to have, and traditionally, as long as NASs are on the same direct network, they will get greater speeds than what we're seeing here. But nevertheless, let's click OK and proceed further. So first things first, we find out the source folders on our QNAP NAS that we want to send. So we want to send that CCTV folder. We select that folder and then make our way over to the destination folders. This will show us the available folders on the Asustor NAS based on the settings we set up with that identity. For now, we're going to go for the main core directory and then go to the bottom and add this task. So now we're backing up this folder from the QNAP. We could have backed up the whole volume if we so choose over to the Asustor. We can choose whether we want to immediately synchronize or go to advanced settings where we can set it up to be periodically daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever floats our boat, as well as retention policies, file policies, and lots of ways in which you can minimize backup tasks and identify the files that are the most important. And finally, if a job is interrupted, you can choose to have the job restarting indefinitely until it's completed. So for now, we're not going to let it synchronize straight away, and we're going to click apply. It will verify the job, and as we can see, we've got the job here already in place from earlier, from a previous video at the bottom. But right here, we've got our job, and that's it. We've now set up the task here to back up our QNAP to our Asustor, and we've created a job here to back up our Asustor to our QNAP. When we're ready, we just click Sync Now, or here, Back Up Now, and it's as straightforward as that. These two platforms can now synchronize as much as we want. So whether it's that you want to synchronize a QNAP to an Asustor to a QNAP, or maybe even both, the options are available to you, and all the steps we've gone through today work on a file, folder, volume, level and more, so do check those out. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope I've helped some of you out there, and if I did help you or you enjoyed this video, do click like below. Click subscribe to learn more about NAS as it becomes available, and take advantage and make the most of your NAS server. Otherwise, I will see you guys later. Cheerio, see you on the next video.